Alberta Primetime with Michael Higgins.
Welcome to Alberta Primetime. Ahead tonight, our politics panel on separatists responding to the Premier's cost claims for separation. But first, a different focus on finances.
That's when we're going to be able to actually have a very good picture of where we are at with oil prices, and then be able to have a good conversation with Alberta about the best way that we can utilize that.
Alberta's new finance minister on preparing to deliver his first quarterly update over the summer, triggering a conversation municipalities will no doubt want to be part of, especially if the province is in a surplus position. Joining us now is the Mayor of Edmonton, Andrew Knack, who we should point out has a busy few days ahead. Mayor Knack, good to see you, sir. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited.
Okay, well, and excited you are, because you are about to host the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, the annual convention. What's that bringing to the Alberta capital?
Well, it's bringing about 2,900 delegates from across the country, municipal leaders and municipal administrators who get a chance to learn from one another, share what they're doing well in their municipalities, learn from other municipalities about what they're doing well, and then also to come up with joint advocacy on different issues, including municipal finance.
Okay, and we should point out, too, there's a significant milestone anniversary, is there not, as part of this particular conference?
This conference here has been going on for a very long time, FCM, and so it's just one more opportunity to bring together municipal leaders, and yeah, very excited about this particular one, because it's the first time since 2015 that we've hosted.
Okay, and I understand as well, 125 years anniversary also. Okay, well, yes, with all of that in mind, what makes this a feather in the cap for Edmonton to be hosting?
Well, as mentioned, since it's been since 2015, since the last time that we hosted, this is our chance to really showcase a lot of the great things that we've been doing. You know, Edmonton is leading the way when it comes to building housing. We are the most affordable major city in Canada, and while there's a lot of other great things, that's a big area of conversation that's been happening across the country. And so, very excited to showcase how we've been able to reach that point, noting that it really has taken about 10 years for us to achieve this. This didn't happen overnight, and so being able to showcase that is one of many great examples that we'll be showcasing throughout this conference. But many other study tours about the great things that are happening, from our transit system to waste management to our partnerships with community and industry. Those will be all on display as we welcome all of the delegates.
And let's pick up on that clip of Alberta's new finance minister. We heard a moment ago about triggering a conversation with Albertans about the financial picture. So how much of a conversation do you expect to have with your counterparts this week over the funding of municipalities?
It's really foundational to what municipalities are working on right now. This is a line that is often repeated, but it needs to be repeated, which is municipalities are responsible for about 60% of all of the infrastructure, and yet are only funded about 8 to 10 cents on every tax dollar people pay. And so there is this huge gap that exists between what we're responsible for and how we get funded. And so municipalities are often left sort of begging for grants to fund what we need to fund for the people that we serve. So it is time for us to talk about how municipalities are funded, both federally and provincially, so that we can make sure we're better planning for the long term, we're better responding to the growth that we're seeing, particularly in Alberta, because without that better foundation, then we continue to have to put a heavy reliance on property taxes, which is a challenge for a lot of municipalities across this country.
Any other top of mind issues that, whether urban or rural, municipal leaders will be bringing up?
I mean, we know we'll be talking about safety. It continues to be a concern. There is still a significant challenge and a mental health and addictions crisis that, while each province is responsible for a lot of that work, there does need to be broader work federally. I know here in Edmonton we're facing an issue that is common across other spots as well, of just around making sure that folks are being taken care of. It can't be left to the municipalities to help those who are facing those significant challenges, because we don't have the legislative authority to create the solutions that are needed. It very much requires us working together as a collective to address these very real issues that people are seeing day in and day out, and frankly are really hitting that point of frustration because they're not seeing the level of action that is needed to address what we're seeing across the country.
Okay, now how do you see the issue of Alberta debate over separation and the pending referendum maybe factoring into conversations with your municipal counterparts from across the country?
You know, I want to use this as an opportunity to remind people from across the country that Edmonton is vital to Canada and that we are not at all interested in separating from this country. It is a small number of people, and we need to stay focused on the issues that matter most to Canadians and Albertans. We want to focus on affordability and safety and housing and those things that matter. The last thing I want to see us do is waste time on an unnecessary referendum for a possible referendum. We have far more important things to be doing right now. And so that is going to be a message to our delegates, which is that, Edmontonians are proud Canadians, and we very much look forward to continuing to be a part of this country and working together to solve the challenges that people are facing.
From a personal standpoint, though, as Mayor of Edmonton, you are preparing to engage Edmontonians, engage Albertans through the summer on this particular issue, are you not?
Absolutely. I've already started. As frustrating as having this referendum is, and I think it's completely unnecessary, the fact is it's happening now. And therefore, we need to get Edmontonians engaged. What I worry about, we've seen the polls. Edmontonians overwhelmingly want to remain a part of Canada. They believe in what Canada is. They believe in this country. I'm a proud Canadian. I am happy to be a part of this country. But the risk that we have is that Edmontonians are complacent and that they think, there's no chance of this getting approved. Therefore, I'm not going to vote. I'm not going to engage my neighbors. I'm not going to get involved. We cannot have Edmontonians sleeping on this. We need people heavily involved and actually getting out to vote and working to engage as many people to get out and vote, because we can send a clear, although I wish we didn't have to go through this and spend a lot of time and attention on issues that are more important. The fact that we are doing this means people need to get out and vote, and so I'll be continuing to engage people over the next 5 months.
All right. So with all that we've discussed here this evening, what's the likelihood of maybe hearing from other levels of government through the convention? Is the Premier on the agenda? Could the Prime Minister be dropping in to address delegates?
So those are usually last-minute decisions for everyone. So we know there's going to be federal ministers. We know there's going to be provincial ministers. So I'm excited to welcome everyone from across the province and country, not just municipal leaders, but provincial and federal leaders. And whoever shows up, we're going to be ready to show them a warm welcome and be able to learn from one another and then advocate on the issues that we can collaborate on together.
All right. We'll leave it there. Appreciate your time this evening, Mayor Knack. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Andrew Knack is the Mayor of Edmonton. From the building cost of separation debate to the appointment of a former judge to chair the new Electoral Boundaries Advisory Panel. Time now for tonight's politics panel. And joining us this evening, Donna Kennedy-Glantz, former Conservative MLA and Cabinet Minister, now a columnist with the National Post, and Marg McQuaig-Boyd, former NDP MLA and Cabinet Minister. Good evening to you both. And let's begin with building dust up over the dollars and cents of separation.
I think I came up with almost $400 billion worth of transitional costs that we'd have to assume, in addition to somewhere between 25 to $50 billion worth of annual costs.
We're going to have a better trade agreement in a free and independent Alberta than Canada has, because we haven't been constantly sticking our finger in the eye of the president.
Leaders of the Alberta Independence Movement say Premier Smith is inflating the cost of the province separating from Canada and instead expects it would generate billions in new revenue. As we heard from new Finance Minister Jason Nixon on Tuesday, he has been tasked with developing a document that spells out the actual cost. Donna, is now the time for the Smith government to be engaging in the costing element of this debate? Could the position have been taken before triggering the referendum question?
Oh, I think it's an important question, and I wish this issue had come up about 6 months earlier, but here we are, and it is an important question. I don't know anyone who has actually read the separatists' costing of the value. Yeah, I think of separation, they call it priceless, but I think the premier just threw a great big boulder at them and said the transition cost, the cost just to do this is going to be enormous. Like that's billions. That's a lot of money, and math is hard. Prentice reminded us of that, if you recall. This is an important question. People want to know what's going to cost us to do the transition, let alone going into being a separate jurisdiction. And I think the rose-colored glasses are coming off. It's good. It's a very good message, I think.
Well, Mark, how do you feel the separatist side comes off in this debate over transition costing? How challenged will it be to defend its position?
Well, the little bit I've read from their side, I think they clearly show they have no clue as to what it's going to cost to run a government. None of them have been in government. And I think certainly the premier's numbers seem a little more realistic than theirs. So, yeah, I think they're not coming off as actually knowledgeable to me.
Donna, how much of a role do you feel the federal government should or could have in weighing in on this costing debate, or is this a debate that should be left here in the province?
At this point in time, I think if I were Ottawa, I would let this fester in the province. It's very early days for somebody in Ottawa to be saying, yes, this is the value of your share of the pension, or this is your share of the debt, Alberta. Those are very serious, contentious conversations, and I don't think any of that would ever go easily. And why would Ottawa roll into this debate now? They don't need to. This is exploding all on its own. I think this is a time for them to just watch.
Okay, so Marg, what's writing then politically on the costing document Finance Minister Nixon has been tasked with producing?
Well, I think they have to, come up with some thorough and considered numbers. I think politically, once whoever writes this document, they need to maybe have a third party person review it and say, yes, these are the numbers for them to be believed, because there's certainly a number of people who don't believe what the government's saying and won't believe the other side. So it would be helpful for them to make this document come off as these are the numbers and this is what we know it will cost, and keep the politics out of it as much as they can and just be factual.
Donna, you've had a chance to hear from the Premier. She's been speaking out on her stand against separation, as have members of her cabinet. At what point, though, should maybe the same be expected of UCP MLAs throughout the Smith caucus?
Oh, it's a tough question, and I know it's one that we've been asking for quite a while. I mean, there are people who are undecided. I think that they are entitled to remain undecided. If I had an MLA and I wasn't clear about the direction they were taking, I would be phoning their office to ask that question. Whether that's a public pronouncement or not is a different question. But I think you, as a member of a constituency, a constituent, are entitled to be asking your representative how they'll be voting and what way they'll be supportive. But whether that becomes a full-blown stand up in the legislature and declare your loyalty, I don't know that this is exactly the right time to be doing that. It may be the 1st of October. I just don't feel like we know enough right now.
And Mark, how do you see this debate over separation playing out at the constituency level? And that is regardless of which side of the aisle an MLA sits on.
I think the MLAs are going to be pretty busy this summer answering that question and saying what side they're on. I take a bit of a different view in that as an MLA, you swear allegiance to the Crown, and to our country when you are sworn in. So I think if you're starting to change your mind, I think you should make that known to your constituents sooner than not. But I would hope at the end of the day, all MLAs say where they're at and what they're going to do about this vote coming up.
All right. Time for us to take a bit of a break, but when we come back, the appointment of a former judge to the panel advising MLAs on redrawing electoral boundaries. More from our panel in a moment. Welcome back. Retired Calgary Judge Brian O'Farrell has been named to chair a new panel tasked with another redraw of Alberta's electoral boundaries. The panel was announced after the government rejected an initial set of recommendations from the Electoral Boundaries Commission and will advise a UCP-led committee of MLAs on the redraw. The opposition questions how O'Farrell can be impartial, given he's donated money to the UCP in the past. The UCP counters, saying the retired justice is free to personally participate in the political process and still be trusted to be impartial professionally. Marg, first off, what do you make of the naming of this former Alberta justice to chair the panel and any of the contention around the appointment?
I agree with the contention. I think once he ceased to be a judge and is declared he's a UCP member, that takes away any ability to be impartial. But having said that, we shouldn't even be at this point. I think the system should have been respected to start with and should never have come to the point where the UCP is gerrymandering this whole process to make it easier for them to get elected in the next election.
Donna, how much should it matter whether or not this new chairperson made donations to the UCP? Should that have been a consideration in the selection?
Yes, I think it should have been. I don't think it creates a bias. I think it creates a potential conflict, and we need to talk about that. I think the bigger issue is the one that Marg has identified, and also the fact that, you know, the government went to the Canadian Bar Association and the Law Society of Alberta and said, can you advertise for judges who might want this role? And they only had 2 candidates step forward. So you've got, you know, A or B, and that's your choice. That's the problem, is that there's a lack of trust about the whole process, and there's a lot of irritation between the judges and lawyers in Alberta and this government. And I think that friction is showing up in a lot of different ways, and this is one of them. And I think that's probably as big or bigger an issue than the one we've got today that we're talking about.
Okay, so Marg, now that the chair has been chosen, next steps for the Legislative Committee of MLAs will be to nominate members to sit on the independent advisory panel. How much scrutiny do you expect there to be in that regard?
I think there'll be scrutiny, but, you know, I think we all know at the end of the day where this is going, and it's just going to be, you know, a fluffy process to justify what they're doing. And, you know, she wants, or the government wants a bunch of urban, you know, constituencies. So, and, you know, some extra seats in that. But I think that the whole system is just not good. And I think it's fraught with errors from the beginning, and yeah, we all know where it's going.
Oh, okay, so one more question for you on this one, Donna. Once this advisory panel is in place, what kind of weight is resting on the shoulders of its members? What should Albertans be watching for?
It's a huge responsibility. They've already had extensive consultations. They now have raised the number of seats from, you know, 2 extra to 4 extra. It is a period of incredible growth. How do you absorb it? How do you design so that it is fair? You know, Marg talking about rural, urban being combined so that it edges towards, you know, the growth edges towards urban, which is arguably going in the direction of the NDP. Those are valid questions. Those are valid considerations. What does growth mean in Alberta electorally? And I think it's probably a question across the whole country. So it's fraught. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be incumbent on this new panel to to prove to the public that they have confidence in the decisions that were made and that are ultimately accepted by this government. And I think that's going to be very, very difficult to. The onus of proof is on them, and I think it's going to be a difficult hill to climb.
Yeah, Albertans will be watching. Okay, for us, one more topic. We heard from Edmonton Mayor Andrew Knack off the top on Edmonton hosting the annual convention of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities later this week. Something like 2,900 municipal leaders coming to the Alberta capital. Donna, how much focus do you expect there to be on this meeting of municipal officials, especially in light now of all the building awareness nationally of Alberta's separation debate?
I think people will be curious to ask about it, and I think both mayors have been very, very explicit about their disinterest in the topic. So hopefully they can not become too engrossed in it that we end up, not talking about things like how do you make sure water main breaks don't happen and getting ahead of infrastructure builds and zoning. So I hope it's not a distraction that moves people away from what really needs to be talked about by big cities.
Marg, as Mayor Knack said, there will be plenty of conversation at the convention around the issue of funding of municipalities. How much weight do you see that messaging carrying with the other levels of government? Will they be listening in?
Well, FCM is always a golden opportunity to discuss these matters. And, in reading across the country, I think this is an issue everywhere in Canada. So it's probably the #1 issue. As Donna said, I think they need to get the elephant out of the room as far as the separation, and then that's probably it. And, maybe ways to work with the federal government on, better health care, which also seems to be an issue in all the provinces. And, so I hope they have some good conversations. It's nice that it is here, and we get a chance to focus Alberta in a positive light across the country. And, I think it's going to be nice to see where they get to at the end of the few days.
And Donna, maybe once they get that contentious issue of separation maybe out of the way or off to the sidelines, what should they, though, be talking about from a municipal standpoint?
I think growth is a really big question for Alberta mayors, but for other mayors, it's the opposite. I mean, talk about a place like Windsor where you've got growing unemployment and jobs. I think CUSMA, the negotiations are really, really a big issue for these mayors, and they deal with the fallout of those decisions. So I think growth, no growth, and our trade negotiations are big themes. They live with consequences.
And Marg, should there be an expectation of federal cabinet ministers attending, provincial cabinet ministers, and carrying on conversation at that level?
Absolutely, and I would hope that a number of federal ministers and federal MLAs, or MPs, can join and listen to the conversations because it's important to the work they do. And certainly there'll be an opportunity for our MLAs to attend and ministers. And I think this is such a great group of people that work hard for not just their cities, but for our nation. This is a great opportunity for them to attend if they're able to.
All right. We'll leave it there for time. Great to see you both. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Donna.
Now, here are a few responses to a recent story posted by CTV News, and it is about how much separation could cost Alberta. According to Army Man, real question is, what would it cost Canada? Les chimes in with this. Do not forget that soon Alberta will not have oil revenue to help pay off this debt. Robert sees a positive, saying independent Alberta would be the richest country in the world, bar none. Canada Club isn't convinced, writing, it's an unworkable pipe dream. Alberta separation is not a legitimate movement. And Lee adds, dissolve Confederation and start over to protect our children's future and our present. Have your say. Email us anytime at comments@albertaprimetime.com. Coming up tomorrow, with the Smith government rolling out a new surgery funding model for public hospitals, we'll hear from a physician and health economist on what it could mean for Alberta's healthcare system. That's on Thursday. Until then, have a great evening, everyone, from all of us at Alberta Primetime. Thank you for watching, and join us again next time.